What if I told you that Syria, a nation often seen today in the context of war and political unrest, has its origins deeply rooted in the Bible and plays a key role in biblical prophecy? Syria's past is not the only thing the Bible speaks of. There are also prophecies that suggest Syria's role in the future. From ancient alliances with Israel and conflict with the kingdoms of Judah and Israel to prophetic visions of judgment and restoration, Syria's story in the Bible is far more significant than many realize. Syria, referred to in the Bible as Aram, was home to one of the oldest civilizations and has a rich biblical history that stretches from the times of Abraham to the prophecies of the end times. So join me as we explore the biblical origins of Syria, its historical significance, and the future that awaits this ancient nation according to biblical prophecy. By the end, you may never look at Syria the same way again. Syria, as we know it today, was historically known in the Bible as Aram, and its people, the Arameans, are mentioned numerous times throughout the Old Testament. The name Aram refers to both the region and the people who inhabited the area. It was a significant kingdom located north of Israel and was bordered by the Euphrates River to the east and the Mediterranean Sea to the west. The ancient capital of Aram was Damascus, a city still standing today as the capital of modern Syria. According to Genesis 10:22-23, the Arameans were descended from Shem, one of Noah's sons, through Aram, Shem's grandson. This connection places Syria's origins in the post-flood world, making the Syrians direct descendants of Noah, like the Israelites and many other peoples in the Middle East. As descendants of Shem, the Arameans are considered part of the Semitic peoples, meaning they shared linguistic and cultural similarities with the Israelites and other neighboring groups like the Akkadians and Babylonians. The region of Aram is often associated with the patriarchs of Israel, especially with Abraham. When Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for his son Isaac, he instructed him to go to Aram Naharaim, the region of Haran, where Abraham's family lived. Genesis 24:4. This shows a close connection between the early Hebrews and the Arameans, a connection that continues throughout biblical history. Syria's interactions with Israel were complex, oscillating between periods of friendship, alliances, and hostility. The Bible records many instances of Syria's kings being both allies and enemies of the Israelites. One of the most notable alliances between Israel and Aram was between King David and Toi, the king of Hamath, a city in Aram. In 2 Samuel 8:9-10, Toi sends his son to David to congratulate him on his military victories, showing that there were times when Israel and Aram enjoyed peaceful relations. However, as Israel's influence grew, tensions between the two nations increased, especially during the time of the divided monarchy, when the kingdoms of Israel, the northern kingdom, and Judah, the southern kingdom, were separate. Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, often fought against the northern kingdom of Israel, and the Bible records several battles between the two. In 1 Kings 20, we see an instance where Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, attacks Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom, but is ultimately defeated. However, Syria remained a persistent threat to Israel throughout the reigns of various kings. One of the most dramatic confrontations between Syria and Israel occurred during the reign of King Ahab. In 2 Kings 6:8-23, the prophet Elisha plays a key role in thwarting a Syrian attack by revealing to the king of Israel the secret movements of the Syrian army. In one of the more famous episodes, Elisha prays for God to blind the Syrian forces, allowing Israel to lead them into captivity without bloodshed. Though often at odds, Syria and Israel were also known to form alliances when mutual threats arose. For example, in 2 Kings 16, we see that Pekah, king of Israel, allied with Rezin, king of Aram, to attack Ahaz, king of Judah. This complex network of alliances and conflicts paints a picture of Syria's significant role in the political landscape of the ancient Near East. As Syria's conflicts with Israel escalated, the Bible began to speak prophetically about the fate of Syria. Several prophets in the Old Testament delivered oracles of judgment against Syria, foretelling its downfall and destruction for its enmity against God's people. The prophet Amos delivers a harsh prophecy against Damascus in Amos 1:3-5. He says, "This is what the Lord says, for 3 sins of Damascus, even for 4, I will not relent. Because she threshed Gilead with sledges having iron teeth, I will send fire on the house of Hazael that will consume the fortresses of Ben-Hadad." This prophecy speaks of God's judgment on Syria for its brutal treatment of Israel and promises the destruction of its royal dynasty and strongholds. Similarly, the prophet Isaiah speaks of the downfall of Damascus in Isaiah 17. He declares, "See, Damascus will no longer be a city, but will become a heap of ruins." Isaiah 17:1. This prophecy foretells the destruction of Syria's capital city, which has stood as one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. Isaiah's prophecy is significant because it points to a time when Syria, despite its power, would be devastated and reduced to ruin. Additionally, Jeremiah 49:23-27 contains another prophecy against Damascus, emphasizing its destruction and the panic that will seize the people. Damascus has become feeble. She has turned to flee, and panic has gripped her. Anguish and pain have seized her, pain like that of a woman in labor. This prophetic imagery paints a vivid picture of the calamity that would befall Syria as a consequence of its enmity toward Israel and its acts of violence and war. Though these prophecies were initially fulfilled through Assyrian invasions and the eventual fall of Damascus, many theologians believe that there could be future fulfillments of these judgments, especially in the context of the end times. Beyond its historical significance, many believe that Syria has a role to play in end-time prophecies. While Damascus has suffered destruction in the past, some scholars and prophecy experts argue that the ultimate fulfillment of the prophecy in Isaiah 17, where Damascus becomes a heap of ruins, is yet to occur in full. Given the geopolitical turmoil in modern-day Syria, with its civil war, involvement in regional conflicts, and the threat posed by global superpowers, some believe that Damascus's fate could align with biblical predictions in the near future. Syria's involvement in end-time events is also linked to the broader prophecies concerning Israel and its neighbors. In Ezekiel 38-39, Syria is not mentioned directly, but its alliances with other Middle Eastern nations, particularly through its relationships with countries like Iran and Russia, suggest that Syria could be involved in the future war of Gog and Magog. In this apocalyptic battle, a coalition of nations from the north and east of Israel will come together to wage war against God's people. Some interpret Syria's current relationships with hostile nations as setting the stage for this final conflict, where God will intervene to protect Israel and defeat her enemies. While much of Syria's biblical prophecy focuses on its destruction due to its opposition to Israel and involvement in war and idolatry, the Bible also hints at the possibility of restoration for the nation of Syria in the end times. This surprising twist reflects the broader redemptive themes of the Bible, where God's judgment is often followed by opportunities for restoration and reconciliation. One of the key passages regarding the future restoration of Syria is found in Isaiah 9:23-25. Although the focus of this prophecy is primarily on Egypt and Assyria, it has profound implications for Syria, given that ancient Assyria covered much of modern-day Syria. In that day, there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt and the Egyptians to Assyria. The Egyptians and Assyrians will worship together. In that day, Israel will be the third, along with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing on the earth. The Lord Almighty will bless them, saying, "Blessed be Egypt my people, Assyria my handiwork, and Israel my inheritance." Isaiah 19:23-25. This remarkable prophecy foretells a time when Israel, Egypt, and Assyria, which included much of modern-day Syria, would experience peace and unity under the reign of God. Rather than being enemies, they will worship together and become a blessing to the world. This is a stunning reversal of the traditional roles that Egypt and Assyria, and by extension Syria, played as enemies of Israel throughout much of the Old Testament. In this vision, Syria is not excluded from God's plans of reconciliation and restoration. The end times will not only bring judgment, but also a time of healing and unity. This suggests that Syria could play a redemptive role in the future kingdom of God, joining together with Israel and other nations in worshiping the true God. This prophecy of restoration highlights the hope that God's mercy extends even to nations that have historically opposed his people. Syria's future, according to the Bible, may be one of reconciliation and peace if it turns to God and joins in the worship of the true God alongside Israel and other nations. Syria's role in biblical prophecy does not end with the Old Testament. In fact, Syria plays a key role in the early days of Christianity as recorded in the New Testament. One of the most notable cities in Syria, Antioch, became a major center of early Christian activity and was crucial in the spread of the gospel. In Acts 11:26, we read that the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. Antioch, located in modern-day Turkey but historically part of Syria, was one of the largest cities in the Roman Empire and served as a launching pad for Paul's missionary journeys. Moreover, Paul the Apostle had a profound encounter with the risen Jesus Christ while traveling on the road to Damascus, the capital of Syria. In Acts 9, Paul, then known as Saul, was on his way to Damascus to arrest Christians when he experienced a divine vision that led to his conversion. This event marked a turning point in Christian history, as Paul went on to become one of the most influential figures in the early church. Syria, through cities like Damascus and Antioch, became a focal point for the spread of the Christian faith. Many early Christian communities flourished in Syria, making the region an important foundation for the growth of the church. Though modern-day Syria faces turmoil, its biblical legacy reminds us of the significant role it played in the early days of Christianity, and it provides a glimpse into the redemptive potential that still exists for the nation in God's plan. As we turn our attention to the future and the end times, the Bible hints that Syria may play a pivotal role in the apocalyptic events that precede the return of Christ. While the Bible does not offer many specific prophecies about modern-day Syria, its mention in key passages concerning the Middle East suggests that it will be involved in the unfolding events of the last days. In particular, Isaiah 17:1 contains a significant prophecy about Damascus, the capital of Syria. See, Damascus will no longer be a city, but will become a heap of ruins. Isaiah 17:1. This prophecy speaks of the destruction of Damascus, a city that has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years. Some scholars believe that this prophecy has not yet been fulfilled and may point to a future destruction of Damascus during the end times. The book of Revelation also provides apocalyptic visions involving the nations surrounding Israel, which could include Syria. In Revelation 16:12-16, we read about the gathering of nations for the Battle of Armageddon. While Syria is not explicitly named, its geographical location near Israel and its historic ties to the nations of the north suggest that it could be one of the nations involved in this final confrontation. Additionally, the War of Gog and Magog, described in Ezekiel 38-39, involves a coalition of nations that will attack Israel in the end times. While Syria is not specifically named in this passage, its close proximity to Israel and its alliances with nations such as Russia, Iran, and Turkey suggest that it may play a role in this future conflict. As we observe the modern geopolitical landscape, Syria's involvement in regional conflicts, particularly its alliance with Iran and Russia, could be seen as part of the end-time alignments described in biblical prophecy. The civil war in Syria, the rise of terrorist groups, and the international intervention in the region all point to Syria's strategic and prophetic significance in the last days. Beyond the geopolitical aspects, Syria's role in biblical prophecy also has profound spiritual implications. Syria, like many nations mentioned in the Bible, stands as a symbol of the broader spiritual warfare that will intensify in the end times. In Isaiah 19, the prophecy of Egypt, Assyria, and Israel coming together in worship serves as a powerful metaphor for God's plan of redemption for all nations, including Syria. This vision of unity and worship under the reign of Christ offers a glimpse of the ultimate restoration that is promised to those nations that turn to God. Despite its turbulent history and its role in opposing Israel, the Bible suggests that Syria, like other nations, has the potential to be part of God's redemptive plan. The judgments that are prophesied for Syria, such as the destruction of Damascus, may serve as a precursor to a greater spiritual awakening in the region. This theme of judgment followed by redemption is seen throughout the Bible. Just as Israel was judged for its sins but ultimately restored, so too might Syria experience God's mercy in the end times if its people turn to Him. In the end times, Syria's journey will be one from conflict to peace, from judgment to restoration, as part of God's larger plan for the Middle East and the world. Whether through present-day conflicts or future prophecies, Syria's role in biblical prophecy is far from over, and its destiny is intricately tied to God's plan for the region.